We had a dinner with my dad, was in the barn. We hosted Thanksgiving. My dad was there, probably.
Less than 3 days ago, a sealed door on the Kilcher Homestead was opened for the first time in years. What lay hidden inside Otto Kilcher's locked root cellar stunned his family into silence and sent shockwaves through everything they believed about their lives. In a matter of hours, decades of trust and tradition were thrown into question. This was not the Alaska they thought they knew, and the consequences are only beginning to unfold. The hidden discovery. It began with a damaged hinge and a curious teenager. Ivan Kilcher's youngest son, August, had been wandering along the far edges of the homestead when he noticed something strange near the old root cellar his grandfather Otto had kept locked for as long as anyone could remember. The thick wooden door, scarred by years of brutal Alaskan winters, was slightly open. The padlock that once held it shut lay nearby in the dirt, rusted through and broken. August had grown up hearing stories about that root cellar. Every time questions came up, Otto dismissed them with vague replies and firm warnings to stay clear. The family respected that boundary. Otto Kilcher valued privacy above most things. A pioneer who had spent more than 7 decades surviving in one of the harshest landscapes on Earth. But curiosity is powerful, especially for a young man raised watching his family's struggles and victories unfold on national television. August pushed the door farther open. The hinges creaked loudly. A rush of cold air spilled out from below, bringing with it a scent that stopped him short. Damp earth mixed with something sharper, more chemical, and deeply unsettling. He called out for his father. No answer. The homestead was unusually quiet that afternoon. Most of the family had gone to Homer for supplies. August was alone. Carefully, he made his way down the wooden steps, using his phone's flashlight to cut through the darkness. The beam moved across stone walls and old shelving, most of it bare. But in the far corner, stacked neatly against the wall, sat dozens of sealed containers, plastic bins, metal boxes, glass jars marked with handwritten labels, the ink faded by time. August moved closer, his heart pounding. Something about the space felt wrong, about the secrecy surrounding it for so many years. He crouched down and opened the first container. What he found made his blood turn cold. Photographs, hundreds of them. Some were recent, printed on modern paper. Others were clearly decades old, edges yellowed and curling. These weren't family pictures or homestead memories. They were images of strangers, distant shots taken discreetly, like surveillance. On the backs were notes written in Otto's unmistakable handwriting, dates, times, locations. Then August discovered the journals. 3 leather-bound notebooks filled with Otto's precise script. Page after page of observations, calculations, and detailed records formed a story August couldn't begin to understand. His hands trembled as he turned the pages, his thoughts racing. He pulled out his phone and called his father. This time he didn't wait. He left a voicemail that would change everything. "Dad, you need to come home right now. I'm in Grandpa's root cellar. You're not going to believe what's down here." The family's fear. Otto Kilcher returned to the homestead shortly after nightfall, driving his old pickup along the familiar dirt road. He had no idea that his family was already gathered inside Ivan's cabin, and no idea that the secret he had guarded for nearly 3 decades had been uncovered. Atz was the one who called him. The exchange was brief and strained. "We need to talk, Otto. Tonight. Everyone's here." Otto answered just as sharply. "About what?" "You know what." There was a long pause on the line before Otto finally replied, "I'll be there in 20 minutes," and ended the call. Those 20 minutes stretched endlessly for the family waiting inside. It had been decided that Atz, as the oldest brother, would lead the discussion. Still, everyone understood this would not be a normal family argument. This wasn't about land boundaries or simmering resentment. It was about something far deeper, the basic truth of who Otto Kilcher really was. When Otto stepped through the door, he looked older than his years. his face carefully neutral, neither defiant nor remorseful. His eyes moved slowly across the room, taking in his brother, his children, his wife, his nieces and nephews. Then he noticed the containers stacked against the wall, and his posture stiffened slightly. "So," he said quietly, "you opened it." Atz moved forward. "Otto, what the hell is all of this? We need answers. We need to understand what you've been doing." Otto eased himself into a chair, moving with the deliberate care of a man shaped by decades of physical labor. He sat silently, hands folded, before finally speaking. "It's exactly what it looks like," he said. "I've been keeping track of people who needed watching." "Watched?" Shane snapped. "Dad, this isn't watching. This is stalking. This is justice," Otto cut in, his voice suddenly hard. "This is what happens when the system fails. When bad people hurt good people and walk away because they know how to work it, or because no one cares enough to stop them." Charlotte reached for his hand, but Otto gently pulled away. "Otto, please, help us understand." Slowly, he began to explain. He spoke of the first case, back in 1998, a family friend whose son had died in a fishing accident caused by negligent maintenance. The boat owner had money, connections, and lawyers. The investigation had been rushed, the family devastated, justice hollow. Otto had watched decent people fall apart while the responsible party faced little consequence. Something in him had broken, or perhaps been awakened. The belief that if the system refused to act, someone had to. "I started paying attention," he said, "not just to that case, but others. I heard things, stories of wrongs that never got made right, and I realized I had skills. I could watch. I could document. I could notice things others overlooked." He described teaching himself investigative methods, learning how to collect information without attracting notice. He spoke of the grim satisfaction he felt when accountability followed, an abuser punished, a corrupt business exposed. "But you crossed lines," Ivan said, his voice tight. "You invaded privacy. You accessed confidential records. You could go to prison for this." Otto met his son's gaze. "I did what needed to be done. And yes, I crossed lines. I won't apologize." The room erupted as voices collided in anger, confusion, and fear. How could he justify this? How could he risk the homestead, the family name, the television show? What if any of it became public? Beneath the outrage lay betrayal. Otto had always been their anchor, the steady presence they relied on. Now they were learning he had lived a hidden life capable of destroying everything they shared. "What about us?" Charlotte asked quietly, her words cutting through the noise. "What about your family? Didn't we matter enough for you to trust us?" For the first time, Otto faltered, his jaw tightened, his eyes distant. "I was protecting you," he said hoarsely. "All of you. What you didn't know couldn't hurt you, couldn't implicate you." "That wasn't your call," Atz replied firmly. "We face things together. That's always been who we are." Otto shook his head. "Not this! This was mine to carry." The conversation dragged deep into the night, painful and unresolved. Otto refused to express regret for his actions, though he acknowledged the hurt his secrecy caused. The family struggled to reconcile the man they loved with the shadow version exposed before them. By the time Otto left for his own cabin, Charlotte silently at his side, nothing had been settled. The family was fractured, trust had been shattered, and the question of what to do next loomed over them all like the dark Alaskan winter they knew was coming. Secrets hidden beneath the homestead. The Kilcher Homestead has long stood as a symbol of grit and independence ever since Ewell and Ruth Kilcher first settled it in the 1940s. Their children, Atz, Otto, and the others, were raised on principles of self-sufficiency that would eventually draw millions of viewers to Alaska, the last frontier. Yet beneath the warm image of family unity and survival, there had always been murmurs of strain, quiet conflicts, and unresolved tensions that never made it onto the screen. Otto Kilcher, now in his early 70s, was known as the practical one. A mechanic and relentless problem solver, He gravitated toward what could be built, repaired, or engineered. While his brother Atz followed music and philosophy, Otto anchored himself in machinery, structures, and workable solutions. He became the backbone of the homestead, the man everyone relied on to keep things running no matter the challenge. Over the last 18 months, however, subtle but troubling changes emerged. Otto grew increasingly distant, spending hours alone in his workshop or vanishing for entire afternoons without explanation. His wife, Charlotte, quietly shared her concerns with other family members. Otto had always valued independence, but this felt different. There was an edge to him now, a sense of preoccupation that bordered on paranoia. Shane Kilcher, Otto's son, remembered a conversation from the previous summer when he directly asked about the root cellar. "I just wanted to know what was down there," Shane later told his cousins. "He looked at me like I'd crossed an invisible line. He said it was just storage and told me to respect his space. The way he said it wasn't normal. It almost felt threatening." The root cellar had been built in the 1960s, when survival demanded careful food storage through Alaska's brutal winters. Over time, as modern conveniences arrived, most of the family abandoned those older methods. By all logic, Otto's cellar should have been unnecessary. Yet Otto maintained it obsessively. He replaced the door twice, upgraded the lock 3 separate times, and made it clear no one was allowed inside without his approval. The family honored that boundary. Fame from the show had brought comfort but also pressure, and everyone had learned that giving space was sometimes the only way to preserve peace and public image. That fragile balance shattered with August's discovery. Ivan arrived within an hour of hearing his son's voicemail and found August sitting outside the cellar, pale and shaken. The containers had been brought to the surface, lined across the grass like evidence. Ivan's anger flared, first at his son for trespassing, then at the breach of Otto's privacy, but it faded when he saw what was inside. "This doesn't make sense," Ivan whispered, paging through a journal. The photographs were the most disturbing. Images from Homer, Anchorage, Seward, even Fairbanks. Ordinary people, ordinary moments, all quietly observed. The journals matched the photos with dates, times, and notes about routines, suggesting years of careful surveillance with no explanation. By evening, the family had gathered. Atz arrived solemnly. Charlotte wept, insisting there had to be a reason. The younger generation stood in stunned silence. One question lingered above all others. Where was Otto, and what would he say when confronted with this discovery? The truth inside the containers. As the Kilcher family carried out a deeper review of what had been hidden inside the root cellar, the full extent of Otto's secret work grew clearer and far more unsettling. What first appeared to be scattered surveillance slowly revealed itself as something calculated, organized, and disturbingly intentional. Each container had been numbered, 37 in all, labeled by year, starting in 1998 and continuing through the present. Inside were photographs, printed files, newspaper clippings, and handwritten notes, all arranged with the discipline of a long-term investigator. Ivan and Shane led the sorting, while other family members watched in stunned silence, unable to bring themselves to help. What emerged was a portrait of activity that defied easy explanation. Container 1, dated 1998, held photographs of a man in his 40s. The images placed him at common locations around Homer, a grocery store, the harbor, a neighborhood bar. Attached was a yellowed article about a fishing accident that had claimed 3 lives that same year. Otto's notes showed he had been following the man for months prior. The last journal entry read, "Confirmed. Negligence proven. No official charges. Justice incomplete." Container 7, from 2004, focused on a woman and her teenage daughter. The monitoring spanned months. Included were copies of police and Child Protective Services reports, documents Otto should not have had access to. His notes suggested involvement in a domestic abuse case. The final line stated, "Child removed from home. Mother charged." The system failed until forced to act. A pattern became undeniable. Otto had been tracking people tied to cases he believed represented failures of justice. Drunk drivers, exploitative employers, predatory landlords. Each subject had a file. But the most alarming detail was not the surveillance. It was the outcomes. In multiple cases, Otto's notes corresponded with later consequences. The fisherman lost his license following a surprise inspection. The abusive parent faced new charges after anonymous evidence surfaced. Otto had not only observed, he had intervened. Shane uncovered a master journal listing 42 names across 27 years. Some entries were marked complete, others uncertain. A few appeared ongoing. He was acting as a vigilante, Evin said softly. The most recent containers showed Otto was still active. Container 36 documented a businessman accused of environmental violations. Container 37, the current year, focused on a contractor the family recognized from a past dispute. Surveillance entries were dated less than a month prior. Charlotte listened in silence, shaken. The family faced an impossible question. Were these crimes or misguided attempts at justice? And the answer might be both. Otto's silence and the family's fear. Otto Kilcher returned home just after nightfall, unaware his secret was exposed. Atz called him. The exchange was brief. "We need to talk, tonight." Otto replied simply, "I'll be there in 20 minutes." Those minutes dragged endlessly. Atz was chosen to speak first. When Otto entered, he looked weary. His gaze settled on the containers. "So," he said quietly, "you opened it." Atz demanded answers. Otto sat, silent, then spoke. He admitted he had been watching people. When Shane accused him of stalking, Otto cut him off. "This is justice," he said. He told them about the 1998 case that changed him, about negligence ignored and families destroyed. He believed someone had to act. He taught himself how to document quietly, how to gather evidence. He described moments when accountability followed. When confronted about crossing legal lines, he did not apologize. The room erupted. Anger, disbelief, fear, all collided. Charlotte asked why he never told them. Otto said he was protecting them. Atz disagreed. The discussion lasted deep into the night, unresolved. When Otto finally left, trust was broken. The family stood divided, facing a future shadowed by secrets and the coming Alaskan winter. In the days after the confrontation, the Kilcher family existed in a state of uneasy suspension. They had reluctantly agreed to keep the discovery contained while they tried to determine what to do next. But true privacy is fragile within any family, especially one whose lives have long been shared with millions of viewers. Silence, they quickly learned, was harder to maintain than they had hoped. Shane took it upon himself to review more of his father's journals, believing that understanding the full scope of what Otto had done was the only way forward. What he uncovered added an entirely new layer of complexity. Buried deep in one of the older notebooks was a name that made his stomach drop, his own mother's maiden name. The entry dated back to 2001, several years after his parents' divorce. The notes were vague but unsettling. Surveillance records, observations of arguments, mentions of her then-boyfriend, details no son ever expected to read. Shane confronted his father in private. "You were watching Mom?" he asked. "After the divorce?" Otto's answer was immediate and emotionless. "He was dangerous. I heard things. You were still a teenager, visiting on weekends. I needed to know you were safe." Shane pushed back. "So you spied on your ex-wife?" Otto's reply did not waver. "I protected my son." That revelation opened the floodgates. One by one, other family members discovered that Otto's monitoring had not stopped with strangers or community figures. There were files on people who had interacted professionally with the family, potential business partners, romantic interests connected to his children, and even a crew member from the television show who had been abruptly let go years earlier. Otto had been watching everyone, quietly building an unseen perimeter around his family without their consent. Avon uncovered records showing Otto had researched people who had criticized the Kilchers online or spoken negatively in public forums. Nothing criminal was found, but the obsessive nature of the documentation was alarming. During another heated exchange, Ivan confronted him. "This isn't protection," he said. "This is control. This is paranoia." Otto disagreed. In his mind, he was the unseen guardian doing what others were too naive or afraid to do. He believed the world was filled with people willing to exploit trust, to smile while causing harm. After decades of experience, he believed vigilance was survival. To him, trust was a risk the Kilchers could not afford. Quietly, the family consulted a lawyer outside their usual circle. The assessment was grim. Otto's actions, illegal surveillance, acquiring confidential records, and providing anonymous tips that influenced legal outcomes could expose him to serious criminal charges. Stalking, harassment, potential theft, or computer-related crimes. The risks were real. Civil lawsuits were also possible if any targets learned the truth. Media exposure would mean scandal, potentially ending the show, destroying their public image, and unraveling their livelihood. The family faced an impossible choice: protect Otto and risk becoming complicit, or expose everything and face the fallout together. Atz argued they had to confront it openly. "We've always said we show real life, not fairy tales. Hiding this would destroy what we stand for." Others disagreed. The show supported extended family members and crews. Ending it would harm far more people than just themselves. Charlotte, torn between loyalty and conscience, tried to find compromise. "Maybe we stop this here. Destroy the evidence. Make sure Otto never does this again." Shane was firm. "That makes us accessories." Then August spoke, calm but resolute. "We teach our kids accountability and integrity. How can we do that if we bury the truth?" No one had an answer. Otto remained mostly silent. He had lived with his choices for nearly 3 decades. Perhaps releasing control was a relief. The family stood divided, knowing time was no longer on their side. August had confided in a friend. Curiosity spreads fast, and once truth reaches daylight, it rarely stays buried. Aftermath and lingering uncertainty. 3 weeks have passed since August Kilcher uncovered the contents hidden inside Otto's locked root cellar. Since that moment, the Kilcher family has remained locked in a state of quiet crisis, their well-known unity strained in ways they never anticipated. Otto has dismantled the operation entirely. The containers have been relocated to an off-homestead storage facility, though no final decision has been made about their fate. The journals and photographs sit in uncertainty, too risky to keep close, yet too significant and potentially incriminating to simply destroy. Otto himself has grown increasingly withdrawn. He continues his routines on the homestead, repairing equipment, maintaining machinery, and completing daily tasks as he always has. But an unmistakable distance now exists between him and the rest of the family, a barrier formed from broken trust and unresolved questions. Charlotte shared quietly with her stepdaughter that Otto seems almost lighter in some ways, as though revealing the secret lifted a long, carried burden. Still, he has shown no regret for his actions, only sorrow for the pain his secrecy caused those closest to him. For now, the family has chosen to keep everything private. Legal counsel has advised that silence offers the greatest protection. Yet this decision sits heavily with several family members, particularly those who hold transparency and accountability as absolute principles. Filming for the next season of Alaska, The Last Frontier, is scheduled to begin in 6 weeks. Whether Otto will appear remains undecided. His presence now carries potential risk, and the very show that brought recognition and stability could also expose them to devastating consequences if the truth becomes public. Family relationships have grown increasingly strained. Some stand by Otto, believing his intentions came from a desire for protection and justice. even if his methods crossed boundaries. Others feel he violated fundamental ethical lines, and that supporting him would make them complicit. August, the source of the discovery, has grown noticeably quiet. Though repeatedly told he did nothing wrong, he carries a sense of guilt, feeling responsible for unraveling the peace his family once knew. What began as innocent curiosity has forced him to confront adult realities far sooner than expected. A single question lingers over them all. Who is Otto Kilcher, truly? Is he a vigilante who acted when the system failed? A man shaped by fear and past trauma? A protective patriarch whose devotion turned into obsession? Or is he all of these at once, a deeply complicated individual whose actions defy simple judgment? The root cellar itself now stands empty, its door removed, reduced to another unused structure scattered across the vast homestead. Yet what it symbolized cannot be erased so easily. The secrecy, the surveillance, the hidden life Otto lived for decades. The Kilchers have endured brutal winters, financial strain, personal loss, and constant public attention. But this challenge cuts deeper. It questions the very foundation of who they believe they are. As the Alaskan winter draws closer, the family faces their hardest task yet: rebuilding trust, reconciling deeply held values with uncomfortable truths, and deciding whether some secrets once exposed can ever truly be forgiven. The root cellar has been opened, but the questions it unleashed may never fully disappear. The Kilcher family's story is far from over, and the revelations surrounding Otto's secret activities continue to reshape everything they believed about life on the homestead. What do you think Otto should do next? Was he protecting his family or crossing unforgivable lines? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for updates on this developing story. Hit that notification bell so you never miss the latest on the Kilchers and the secrets that changed everything. The truth has surfaced, but the consequences are only beginning. What happens next will define the future of the Kilcher family and the legacy they leave behind. If you found this story compelling, please like the video and subscribe to the channel for more in-depth documentaries. Turn on notifications so you don't miss what comes next.